Okay, earlier this week I had a discussion panel with a few buddies of mine on Google Plus about whether or not you should watermark, and the general consensus was that it's not a good idea, or it's not really going to protect you from image theft, but it might be a good idea if you want to brand your images with your logo or your studio name or just your own personal name, just so people know that they're your images and you get credit for them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a demonstration for you in Photoshop, and then I'm also going to do it in Lightroom once you have a nice logo made that you can use in Lightroom as well, and you can do batch processing this way and make it much simpler. So when you're exporting a bunch at a time, you can put your logo on everything. Okay, so I'm going to open an image to demonstrate, and the one that I'm going to use is a portrait, and the reason that I'm going to use this portrait is that when you're dealing with a picture of a person, I find that the watermarks can be too obtrusive if you put them over the face. Okay, so we want to make something that brands but doesn't obstruct the viewing of the face, especially if you're showing these to clients or friends that you've done pictures for and they're trying to pick which one they want printed based on your images or your proofs, and you've got a big watermark across it. So you want to make something that doesn't obscure their face, and it's kind of rude to put big letters across people's face, I think. Okay, so I'm going to show you a couple of different ways to do this. The very simplest way, if you're just doing one image at a time, is to add a text layer. Okay, so I've just clicked on the T over here in my little panel of tools. The other way to get to your text tool is by pressing T on your keyboard. Text tool, makes sense. Okay, so I'll give you the keyboard shortcuts as I'm hitting them, the ones that I use most often. Okay, I'm on a Mac, obviously. I've got my little apple up in the top here, and most of the time if I'm using a keyboard shortcut, it's very similar. If I say Command, it's going to be Control on a PC. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is select the tool and choose the kind of font that I want. I've already chosen what font I want, what color, what size. I know what it's going to be when I type it. Okay, you might have to play around with it a bit to find one that you like. Click anywhere on the image and it becomes an active cursor that you can then type into. Okay, so I have my image active and I create a copyright symbol. If you're not sure how to create that, there is a keyboard shortcut for that as well. On a Mac, it is Alt or Option and the G key, G for Gordon. On a PC, I will give you this one because it's slightly different. It is Alt 0169. So hold the Alt key down and type 0169 on your number keypad and let go, and you will get the copyright symbol. So I'm just going to go ahead and add my name. I do have a studio name and a business name, but for this purpose I'm just going to use my own personal name. Okay, now notice that the cursor is still active on the text tool or on the text layer. To deactivate it and make it into a regular layer, you can do a couple of different things. You can either just click over here on the layer itself, okay, or you can hit Command Return on a Mac, and I do believe Control Return is going to do the same thing, and it just deactivates that layer. Basically it says, yeah, I'm done editing that. Okay, so now that you have your text, if it's not quite in the right place, mine's a little bit off-centered, you can move it around, you can add some fancy schmancy stuff. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is just zoom in on this a little bit so we can see it a little bigger. Hit V for Victor on your keypad, or this little key up on the top left of your toolbar, that is your move tool. So V for move, I guess. Okay, and then it gives you this little crosshairs thing so that you can grab your layer and move it around. Okay, put it right there. If you're really finicky, you can add rulers and make it precise, but I'm not that precise here, so I'm just going to eyeball it and say, yeah, that's close enough. Okay, so I've predetermined that I wanted this size of text in this font to fill the bottom of the image. Okay, if it comes out too big or too small, you don't have to highlight the whole text again. You can actually edit it just by having the layer selected. Okay, so you can see up here the layer with the text is highlighted. It's orange, so it's chosen. Okay, if I choose my size here, this is your font size, and this is in your character panel. Okay, if you put your cursor over here, do you see how that changes to a little, it's called a scrubby slider? If I slide this up and down and let go, it will actually change the size of the font. So maybe I want to make it a little bit smaller. I don't want it quite so obvious. Let's go about there, right? So let's go there. So it's about a third of the image, okay? And I can choose to put it either in the bottom right or the bottom left, whichever I decide, okay? I've chosen white as my color. You could choose black if you're on an image that has more light tones in it. And you can also add what's called a layer style. Okay, all I've done is double clicked on the layer and it opens up this little panel for layer style. So you can quickly add a drop shadow. Now I'm actually just going to apply this. I'm going to move this in the middle so you can see what's happening more. We'll come back to it. Okay, so to reopen your effects, just double click where it says effects. So I'm adding a drop shadow, and you can actually move your drop shadow by dragging it right on here. How cool is that? So you can spread it out, you can make it a little wider, you can make it softer, darker, play around with your drop shadow till you're happy with it. Right? And you can add various other different effects. I like emboss. It gives me something that kind of makes the text look a little bit 3D, so it's not sort of so one-dimensional, right? Shadow was. Okay, so all of your shadow is doing is adding a little bit of depth to your image. Right? So I say, yeah, okay, I'm happy with that. Right? The other thing you can do with a text layer is you can change the opacity of it. Now I've still got my move tool highlighted. You see my little X crosshairs moving there. If your move tool is highlighted, any number you select on your keypad will affect your opacity of your layer. Okay, so I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here. You can see the opacity shows at 100% up there. If I type 5 on my keyboard, it now changes to 50%. And look what's happened to our image. Okay, our text has faded out. Okay, I'll go back to 100%, 50%. Okay, so it just makes it a little bit softer and a little more subtle. Okay, so let's put this back in the corner. So if we're doing text, we could say, gee, that looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. I'm going to turn it off and on. You just click the little eyeball next to the layer. I say, yeah, I'm good with that. Okay, I'm done. So then you would save that out as a new file with your logo on it. Okay? If it is something that you think you're going to be doing often, such as adding a logo, it's something you might want to consider creating an action for. Okay, I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. I also want to show you what it looks like if you make an ugly watermark, or what I would consider an ugly watermark. So let's create an ugly one. Okay, so I'm going to put a new type layer. Now I'm going to start with the font being really big. It's not even going to be a big enough font. Okay. I know I want a really big font. Okay, so I'm going to add that G, that Alt G. Okay. I think I want it even bigger than that. We're going to make it even bigger than that. Go back to our little characters panel. We want to make this massive as it can get. We can go with this thing. That should be good. Okay, so that's pretty obviously obscuring her face, right? It's pretty hard to see her expression. How is she supposed to pick her images based on that? Okay, that would be what I would consider an ugly watermark. Even if the opacity was turned down, I still consider that an ugly watermark. When the client is looking at that, they have a really hard time choosing as it is, and then you add this kind of thing over top and it complicates the issue for them. So I would say avoid this type of thing because your clients aren't really going to like it, especially if they've paid you to do the job, right? And it makes it look to them like you expect them to steal their images. So it kind of feels like you don't trust them, and maybe that is the case. But think about it from their perspective. You know how you would feel if blatantly somebody said, I don't trust you with my image, so I'm going to put this over across your face so you don't do anything with it. Doesn't feel so good, right? So I'm going to stick with more of the subtle one down in the bottom for myself. Okay. Alright, I promised to show you how to do an action. So I'm going to get rid of this big giant C over her face. And we're actually going to get rid of this one as well. And I'm going to show you how to record it as an action. Okay, so we're back to just our regular image. Okay, so the actions panel is this little play button on your thing here. If you're not sure how to get to any of these, you'll find them in here as well. So actions on the window panel. Okay. What an action does is it records the series of steps as you create them, and it allows you to play it back quickly with one button. The click of one button, several steps that you did. Okay, it also allows you to apply it as a batch across several images. Okay, that's a little more complex, and I'm not going to get into that in this tutorial, but I'm going to show you how to create it, and you can apply it with one click. Okay, so to create your action from this little side panel here, go to the pull down menu and choose a new action. I'm going to call it, and I'm going to use my copyright symbol, and I'm just going to add my name so that I'm going to name it something that I know what it is if I'm looking at the menu, and I'm going to save it in a folder that I made called My Actions, so I know those are the ones that I created. Okay, and as soon as I clicked on that, you notice that it came up right away and the red button lit up. Okay, so just like on a tape recorder of old, geez, I'm dating myself now. I don't even know what would have a button like that now. I guess audio mix on your computer, I suppose. Okay, so it's recording. So anything that you do after this point is recording until you push the stop button. Okay, so the first thing you want to do before you add any text is make sure that you've got your text set up how you want it. Aha, see, now mine is not. Because we played around with that giant text, I know that I want 48, I don't want 600 or whatever it was. Okay, so it's got the right font, I've got the right color, I know I've got all the right stuff. So hit your T key, get your text, do the same process again, Alt G, type in your text, Command Enter, okay. V to get your move tool, move it down to the bottom, and this will apply on the recorded version. So on your action, the move will apply. Okay. Create your layer style. Okay, I'm going to add my drop shadow. I'm going to add my bevel emboss. Okay. I'm happy with that. And I'm going to change my opacity, so I'm going to fade it out just a little bit. So if you're happy with that, go back to your actions panel, you'll see that it's recorded. Make a text layer, move current layer, set layer style, and set current layer. So click the stop button, so record is there, stop is right next to it, and now it's done recording your action. Okay, now if you want to test that your action has actually worked, let's just hit the little eyeball on there and turn this layer off. Okay, so here's your action. You don't have to open it up. All you have to do is click the play button down below here. Okay, so the buttons are stop, record, and play. So we hit play, and voila! There is our lovely text layer. How amazing is that, right? Okay, so that is the first way to make a nice looking text logo or a text watermark. Okay, the next one I'm going to show you is, close that. Let's get rid of these extra layers that we don't need. So the next one I'm going to show you is actually doing it with a logo. Okay, so I myself have a logo made for my studio. Okay, so I'm going to open up this logo. There we go. Okay, so that's my logo. Okay, so I'm going to open my image, and you notice that my image is on white. So the easiest way to select white is to go into your color range and choose highlights. And so what will happen is if I show this on here, it's going to show me the part that it's selected. Okay. It will show me that I'm missing a tiny little bit, but honestly, for the way we're going to do this, it's not going to make a difference. Okay, so I'm going to show black. Okay, so it's going to be selecting my whites. Okay, so now the logo itself is not selected, the whites are. Okay, so what we want to do then is invert it. Okay, so I go select, inverse. Now my logo is selected. Okay, and what I'm going to do is a copy, paste, and when I do that, it's going to paste just the logo on a new layer that's all by itself. Okay, so on the Mac it's Command C and then Command V for Victor, and now you can see I have a new layer. If I turn off the bottom one, you see I have just the logo. Where you see these little squares, this funny looking grid thing, okay, I don't want to move that around, sorry. Where you see these squares is transparent. Okay, so that's not what your background looks like. It's just telling you that that is transparent. Okay, so we can actually just dump that other layer and it's gone. Okay, what we're going to do is funk this one up a little bit. Okay, so to make a really cool looking logo, I'm going to add my drop shadow and my emboss again. Okay, which kind of gives it a little bit of texture. I personally like emboss or pillow emboss, one of those two, and I'll probably play around with it a little bit to get it just how I want it. Play around with the shadow a little bit. The blending options up here, okay, if you go into advanced blending, you'll see this thing called fill opacity where I'm circling my cursor. Watch what happens if I change this from 100 to 0. My logo disappears, but the shadow is still there. Cool, hey? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to leave the shadows and I'm not going to have the logo showing, so that how that's going to appear on an image is it's going to be really cool because it'll be showing the image through your logo. Okay, so I can move the shadow around with these little sliders, or I can also just grab it and move it around this way. Okay, you know, I'm actually going to put it on this side. And my bevel emboss, I want to make sure my white is all the way cranked up. I might give it a little more black too. Okay, so what that's giving me is a really cool looking logo. Make sure it looks okay over there as well. A really cool looking logo, right, that is transparent. Right? It just looks like it's raised off the surface, right? So it's very, very subtle. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a save as. Okay, save as, which is Command Shift S, and I'm going to save it with a name. I'm going to call it Review, which is my business. Watermark Transparent, and I'm going to add dark because this is the dark version. I'm going to make a light version that has a light shadow as well. Okay, and you want to save it as a PNG file. Okay, a JPEG does not allow for transparency, so if you save it as a JPEG, even though your background is transparent, it'll actually come out as white. Okay, so save it as a PNG, and we're going to change it slightly. We're going to make the drop shadow white. Crazy, you say, right? And no, I can't really see what we're doing, so we can actually make a background layer and just paint it in with black. I'll just paint that in. There we go, paint bucket that in. Okay, so now we can see what we're doing on this layer, and that looks like it's gonna pretty well nicely glow. Okay, so that on. Okay, so we're gonna do a save as again, and this time called it transparent dark. This time it's going to be transparent light. Okay, make sure we get the right format, PNG. Right. And then we're going to close this. If we add the logo, I prefer to do place as opposed to open and then drag it over. Okay, place will put your logo in the center and make it a smart object. So anything that you add with the place function makes it automatically added as a smart object, so I can downsize it. Okay, so you see the problem with that, right? I've got this big white square over top of my picture, and I've actually seen people people do watermarks like that. So they will put their logo in the corner, granted maybe not that big. They will put it in the corner with this big splotch, right? So you're losing a good chunk of your picture that way, right? Look at how much nicer. We'll do place again, right? Find our nice transparent watermarks. So I'm going to use the light one because it's got white shadows and it's on a darker shirt. So I'm going to use the place, and I can automatically size it. Place it down here. Right? Look at how much more subtle that is than the big chunky one. I can even size it down, put it nicely in the corner. Let's have a look at how those look down there. Okay, let's have a look at how our other one works out. If we place the dark one, it's not going to be too bad either, okay? Because I did the bevel and emboss, the bevel and emboss adds the little white line on the other side. If I didn't add that, it would just be lost. You would have a shadow on one side and nothing on the other side, so it kind of gives it an outline on the opposite side, okay? And there we have it. So I kind of like the black one myself, so I'm going to keep the black one and put it over here. Now you can also, once you've got it in there, you can even fade that out too. Right, this one I think I've done pretty subtle, so I'm going to leave it at full opacity. Right, but look at the difference. So that is the basic idea of how you add your watermarks in Photoshop. You can also create the same kind of action for adding your logo. Once you've created this nice transparent PNG file, you can create another action to add it as a logo, just like we did with the text. So create action, record your steps, and save it, and then you can use the batch processing to apply it to many files at one time. Okay, so I'll be right back, and we're going to show you how to do this in Lightroom. If you have Lightroom and you're using Lightroom for most of your processing, you don't want to have to come over to Photoshop to do this. Once you create your nice little transparent logo, I'll show you how to add it in Lightroom. Really easy, and you can create a saved preset for it. Right? So we'll be right back in Lightroom. Welcome back. As you can see, we are now in Lightroom. I use Lightroom version 4. I'm pretty sure that if you go back a version that this will work with older versions as well. Watermarking was part of Lightroom for a while. So this should work if you have Lightroom. If you do have an older version, by the way, such as 3, I highly recommend upgrading to 4 anyways. There was a lot of stuff that happened between 3 and 4 that is a huge benefit, such as your clarity slider works much nicer and the highlight and shadow recovery is much better. You can pull a lot more stuff out. But I digress. So here we are in Lightroom, and I've just picked a few images to do as a sample here, so we're not doing a full gallery. And what we're going to do is I've processed these images already, and I'm ready to export my raw files as JPEGs, and I want to put watermarks on them. So in Lightroom, that happens. You can do it a couple of different ways. You can do it in the print module and then export your print file as a JPEG, and that's nice if you're doing like a fine art print with a border or something like that. However, most of the time I'm just exporting a full file or something for social media or so on, so I just want to put a watermark in the corner that is my branding. So we're going to take our nice watermark that we created over in Photoshop and add them to these lovely images here. So as you'll see on the screen, there's several images picked out, and some are color-coded red and some are color-coded yellow. The reason I've done this is I actually create 2 different watermarks. I create one that goes in the right-hand corner and one that goes in the left-hand corner. So I've actually pre-sorted these, and I'll just run through them. So the ones that are marked with red, now I'm hoping I remember which is which, are going to have the watermark in the bottom right corner. You'll see there's a nice space there where a logo will go. Yellow is going to have it in the left. So this one's going to be left, this is going to be left, this is going to be on the right, 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 left, 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 and right. Okay, now I've predetermined that. So if you have several images to export and you know that some are going to work better on one side or the other, just flag them in some way. In Lightroom, you've got color coding, you've got number coding, and so on. You can rank them with a certain star level. And that's what I've done here, and then I've search for only those ones that are flagged with the red and the yellow. Okay, you can also sort them out. Right now I'm sorting by file name. If I choose to sort them by label color, it'll give me a nice row of red and a nice row of yellow, so I can just pick them easily and do my watermarks in a series. So I'm going to pick the top row, so just a shift click, right? Click the first one, hold shift, click the last one, will select all of your images in a row, and I'm going to export them. Right? And I'm going to show you how to add the watermark in the export dialog box and how to save it as a preset. Okay, so once we click export, the dialog box will pop up for us to be able to export our images, hopefully sooner than later. Good. Okay, as you can see here, I've got several presets already made, so I'm not going to use one of those. I'm going to show you how I make one and what settings I use, particularly for social media exports. Okay, just going to get rid of this one, and we're going to make a new one. Okay, so it asks you various different things, and I'll go through each one. And you probably, if you've done a lot of stuff in Lightroom, you probably have your own presets already made. Okay, so generally if I'm using a preset, I choose this one here. It even tells you that it's useful for presets. Choose folder later, okay, as to where to put my exported files. Okay, file naming, I generally do rename them, and I do that for different reasons. So in this case, I make them with a file name, and then I add -web at the end as an extension before the JPEG name. The reason I do that is that if I'm exporting out different versions of the same image, of the same file, they're all going to have the same file name. And it's easy to get them confused if you're on your computer and just browsing the files. You can't tell which one is the full res, which one is for email. So I just name them with those things that I know I can easily see at a glance, right? I know this is for online. I know one that says -print at the end is full-size high-res print file. Okay, so I'm going to leave it as a file name, -web. Okay, not doing video. Okay. For the web, I do JPEGs and sRGB as a color space. The others are too big and the web doesn't display that anyways. And I'm going to go about 70%. Okay, so that's compressing your JPEG to a 70% JPEG. You can limit your file size if you want as well. I generally don't. Okay. Image sizing. Again, if I'm on the web, I will size it to a maximum size, depending on where I'm putting it. I tend to put a little bit larger images on Google Plus than I do on Facebook, but for most things I use an image that is 1100 wide, and then whatever height the image is, so it will change based on if it's a vertical or horizontal. Okay? And 72 dpi. Okay? The web doesn't display anything other than 72 dpi anyways. If I'm going to the web, I can sharpen for screen. These things are not as important to this particular tutorial, but you can take a look through what those do. Okay, metadata will be what types of information do you want attached to the file, to the JPEG. So I usually leave everything, including my camera data, especially if I'm posting on a photography sharing site. People like to know, what aperture I shot things at, that kind of thing. Okay. This is the one we're going to be most interested in today. Okay, so if you're going to add the watermark, you need to make sure that this checkbox is ticked off, right? And not angry at you, but with a check mark, right? So in here, you'll see in the pull-down menu that I already have several to choose from. The first time you do this, you won't see that because these are all ones that I have saved. Okay, so I'm going to go down to Edit Watermarks, so follow along with me. Okay, and this dialog box will pop up nice and quick, which is nice. And when it comes up the first time, it's generally going to be on this setting, text. Okay, so Watermark Style is showing text. And you can see that previously I had used one with my name, just like I did in Photoshop, right? You can add it in the corner, you can fade it out, right? I can put it in the middle if I wanted and make it, our nice ugly watermark again. Okay, so we did ugly in Photoshop, we can do ugly in Lightroom as well. But we don't want to do that, do we? We want to make it a little nicer. So we want to go back to being able to use that graphic, that logo that we just did in Photoshop. Okay, so to do that, you want to switch to Graphic Style Watermark, and down below, choose the file. Okay, So in here where we saved our logo, I'm going to use the transparent dark one because that one came out pretty nice on Photoshop. Right? Once you do, it shows up. There it is. Voila. So now you have the same types of choices. You can size it. You can stick it smack dab in the middle, and then we've got back to our, hideous overgrown watermark again. But notice how lovely this one is, though. You see that the image is coming right through the watermark. It is nicely transparent because we saved that as a PNG. Okay, so all we got showing up is our lovely shadow and our highlight on the other side. Okay? I personally like this type of look. It gives it a 3D quality, but we're going to size it down. We're going to scale it down just a little bit. Right? I like to put mine in the corner. Right, and now we're doing bottom left on this one. Right, so put it in the bottom left, and these things here tell you can move it away from the edge, how far you want to move it away from the edge. So 3 increments, whatever their increment measurement is in Lightroom. Okay, that's my choice. I like it away from the edge a little bit. Otherwise, it's just kind of tight to the edge. Right, so 3 away on both sides, nice and evenly spaced. Right, the next part is to save a preset for this logo. Okay, just like any other preset, save as a new preset down here. We're going to title it, and then we're going to call it bottom left, okay, because our logo is in the bottom left, and I'm going to say 15 because that's the size. Oops, I didn't make it 15. Let's make it 15. Okay, so the size here is this number, okay, so it's 15 or 15% or 15 pixels. I guess it'd be percent. So I'm going to save it as her view, logo, transparent, bottom left, 15 pixels. Okay. A name that I will recognize just by looking at the pull down menu, so I know what logo I'm using, where it's going, and how big it is. Okay. Save that as a preset. These little arrows at the top here, right there, allow you to scroll through any of the selected images. So in this case, I think I've selected 5 images. So if I just click the right arrow, you'll see that they all look fairly decent with that logo. Now notice this one gets a little bit lost in the leaves. Image like this, you might want to do a custom one. You might want to put it somewhere else. Maybe you might even want to put it up in the top corner. Right? And so you could do a special one just for this image if you decided to. Personally, I don't think it's that big a deal. I'm not going to worry about it so much. I'm just going to leave it where we had it. Okay? It's going to be subtle, that's all. Okay, so I'm happy with that. We've saved our preset and we say done. So now we're back to our export dialog box. We've chosen all the settings that we want. Now our only other thing is to create an export preset. Okay, so in here I'm going to save it as web 1100 with logo. Okay, and that's going under my social media exports. Right, great. There's my preset. So next time, if you're going to do this with the same settings, you don't even have to go in and do all of this, the renaming, the sizing, everything. You just click that and it's boom right there. Okay, so now we've got our sizing, we've got everything set. We just have to click export. Okay, so we're going to put them in here. I'm just going to make a new folder called web images, and I'm exporting them into there. Okay, now if I do my top row, select the top row, and we do the process again. Now I'm going to choose that same preset that I just made, and all I have to do is go to the watermarking setting and go edit, switch it over to the right because that's where we want it now. That's the only change I'm making. Resave it as a new logo preset, so I'm going to say her view logo, transparent, bottom right, 15 pixels. Okay, saved. We can scroll through them, check that they're all good. Looks pretty decent. Export them. It's going to ask me, it's already picking that right folder. Okay, so now it's going to export those. Now notice I didn't wait for the first batch to be done before I did the second batch. Lightroom is a program that works really well with multiple tasks going on in the background if you have enough memory on your computer. That's a whole other topic of discussion about getting Lightroom to run faster and so on, but if you have enough RAM and you have enough space on your computer and Lightroom is running quickly enough, you can do multiple tasks at once. So we'll just wait for this to be completed, and then we'll go have a look at them and make sure that they came out the way we wanted on our files. Okay, so our export is complete. You can see that the dialog box in Lightroom is finished running, and there's our folder with our images. So if I just kind of blow them up a little bit, you can see on the screen there's the logo, bottom right, bottom left, bottom left, bottom right, 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 left, 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 and right. Sounds like a strange military song. Okay, so there's our logo in the bottom corner. Looks pretty good. See how nice that little drop shadow does? And it works really well on an image that has a nice clean corner, of course, which some of these do and some don't, and some work better than others. But I like a nice clean, simplistic look of the transparent logo. It gives it an elegant touch, a little bit of branding without being over the top in your face. Okay. So that is it for today's tutorial on how to make a nice transparent watermark. If you have any questions or comments about this or the Photoshop portion of the video, please add your comment in the comment section below. If you're watching this on YouTube, please head over to herviewphotography.com for more Photoshop tips, Lightroom tips, photography tips, interviews, all kinds of fun, wonderful stuff. As well, there'll be written articles as well as video over on the website. If you're watching this on the website, if you liked what you saw, please feel free to use the social media sharing buttons over on the left and share the love. Until next time, take care and happy photographing.